on behalf of Indo-European Kashmir Forum, Indo-American Kashmir Forum, Indo-Canadian Kashmir Forum, and Hindu Council UK, it's my great honor to welcome you all to commemorate and celebrate the first anniversary of the revocation of Article 370 and Article 35A. We extend a very warm welcome to all our distinguished panelists from India, North America, Canada, and of course from the UK. We also welcome the rest of our panel participants to this special webinar. It's exactly a year ago, the historic decision of abrogating Article 370 was taken by the Government of India to reorganize Jammu and Kashmir into the Union Territory. On 5th of August 2019, everything was redefined for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. The mistake of 70 years had to be put right. Originally, Article 370 and 35A of Indian Constitution were a provision which was very temporary, but it took 70 years to correct this questionable temporary provision. Article 370 was undemocratic, discriminatory, and a barrier to the economic development of the region. Today, a year on, we reflect on how it has impacted on the lives of the Jammu and Kashmir people and the region itself, and the challenges it has had to encounter. And what is the way forward now for Jammu and Kashmir region and the people of Jammu and Kashmir? We look forward to hearing from our expert and eminent panelists their thoughts, their views about how it has been for the past 1 year and how we can move forward. Now, without any further delay, we're already late a little bit. We'd like to share a short video on Kashmir with you before we start with our panelists.
सारे बच्चे मतलब खुश हैं इस चीज़ से कि गवर्नमेंट ने हमको ये चीज़ दी है।
हम इतने खुश हैं कि हमने पहली बार लाइट देखी है।
हमारे लिए खुशकिस्मती है कि इस साल हमें नए कॉलेज मिले।
Over the past year, the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir has witnessed a development-oriented and people-centric governance system. Over 100 progressive central laws and 9 constitutional amendments were made applicable to Jammu and Kashmir, extending certain basic rights for the benefits of the people. Residents of Jammu and Kashmir are now benefiting from reservation in all government jobs.
जम्मू कश्मीर में पहली बार वहां के गरीब सामान्य वर्ग को आरक्षण का लाभ मिला। पहली बार जम्मू कश्मीर में महिलाओं को ये अधिकार मिला कि वे अगर राज्य के बाहर विवाह करती हैं तो उनकी संपत्ति छीनी नहीं जाएगी।
For the first time in the history of J&K, elections to the position of chairpersons of block development councils were held in October 2019, which saw an impressive turnout.
जो गवर्नमेंट ने बीडीसी इलेक्शन कराने का ये पहली दफ़ा हमारे जम्मू कश्मीर में हो रहा है, इससे पहले बीडीसी इलेक्शन कभी नहीं हुआ है।
औरतों को बहुत ज़रूरी है, उनको मिलना चाहिए, बहुत ज़रूरी है। हर घर का मुझे पता किसको क्या है। ये अच्छा कदम है कि करेंगे काम हम।
We, the subscribers up to this declaration,
with the motto of the commoners, by the commoners and for the commoners. In March 2020, Syed Altaf Bukhari, former finance minister of J&K, launched a new political party under the name of Jammu and Kashmir Apni Party. Bringing development to the people has been the motto. Several languishing projects across different sectors have been accelerated. With the deadline of December 2021 for the construction of a crucial railway bridge for Katra-Benihal railway stretch, Kashmir has moved closer to the Indian Railways network. To ease mobility in rapidly growing metropolitan areas, an elevated light rail system in both capital cities of Jammu and Srinagar has been approved. 36 union ministers visited J&K in January 2020, during which over 200 projects were inaugurated. Rural electrification projects have connected tens of thousands of households for the first time to the electricity grid.
हमारे गांव में पहली बार लाइट आई है। हम इतने खुश हैं, जहां के लोग काफी ज्यादा खुश हैं कि हमने पहली बार लाइट देखी है।
Government schools in the Srinagar district have been transformed and are equipped with modern facilities.
पहले ये सब कुछ नहीं था हमारे स्कूल में। सारे बच्चे मतलब खुश हैं इस चीज़ से कि गवर्नमेंट ने हमको ये चीज़ दी है।
Today, dreams of the youth have been brought to their doorsteps. To boost employment and encourage entrepreneurship among the technically qualified youth, J&K government is coming up with 2 IT parks, one each in Jammu and Srinagar. A government medical college has been inaugurated in Kathua and another medical college is announced in Handwara. 2 new All India Institute for Medical Sciences are also coming up, catering to super speciality healthcare in J&K.
जैसे कि इसकी बात है नए मेडिकल कॉलेज की, गवर्नमेंट मेडिकल कॉलेज अनंतनाग जो इसी साल सेटअप हुआ है साउथ कश्मीर में अनंतनाग में, ये एक बहुत ही बड़ा फ़ायदा है हमारे लिए, बहुत ही ज़्यादा हम बयान नहीं कर सकते कितना बड़ा फ़ायदा है।
आज यहाँ आके हमारे कॉलेज का इनॉग्रेशन था, बहुत अच्छा लगा। हमारे लिए खुशकिस्मती है कि इस साल हमें नए कॉलेज मिले।
Highlighting the untapped potential of J&K, the government organized a pre-summit meeting of the J&K Invest Summit in New Delhi to attract investments from across the world. These events showcased policy and regulatory environment, investment opportunities in focus sectors to boost manufacturing and employment generation in the UT. Also, investment roadshows were held across 6 metropolitan cities in India. Did you know that Kashmir is famous for its apple cultivation? Kashmiri apple is a major export from the region. Under a new scheme, apples are now being directly procured from farmers.
मुझे लगता है कि ये अच्छी स्कीम है, इससे हमें किसान और ग्रोवर को यहाँ पे अच्छा फायदा मिलेगा।
Kashmiri saffron has now been given a geographical indication, GI tag. Under an action plan, Kashmiri saffron cultivation, storage and processing is being promoted. Creating opportunities to shine at the national and international stage, sport activity is being actively promoted among the youth through quality infrastructure such as sports stadiums at various locations in J&K. In March 2020, Khelo India Winter Games were held in Kashmir, where hundreds of participants from across the country took part in various sporting events such as skiing, snowboarding, snowshoeing, snow baseball, etc.
आज जो यहाँ पे खेलो इंडिया हो रहा है एक बड़ा इवेंट है एक अच्छा प्लेटफॉर्म मिल रहा है स्किल्स को जो भी यहाँ पे एथलीट्स हैं उनको अच्छा प्लेटफॉर्म मिल रहा है खेलो इंडिया में
In January 2020, almost 10,000 people watched the I-League football match between Real Kashmir Football Club and Mohan Bagan in Srinagar's DRC turf ground.
Thank you. I like now to ask Bob Blackman to just say a few words. But before that, I know Bob needs no introduction, but I like to say a few words about Bob now. Bob Blackman, Padma Shri, a member of Parliament for Harrow East, is a true friend of India. Particularly, he is a best friend and supporter of Kashmiri Pandits. Bob has been involved in our struggle since our exodus of 1990. He has always stood by us and with us in our struggle. I call him our savior. Bob was honored with the Padma Shri Award for his dedicated and committed work to the field of public affairs. He was awarded by the Government of India this award in January 2020. I was personally touched by Bob taking his oath on both the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita when he was sworn in as an MP in the recent election in the House of Commons. Bob, we really thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We are really, you are our savior. Bob Blackman.
Well, namaskar, and thank you for that very kind introduction. I like to think I'm worthy of it. As you quite rightly say, I have been following the plight of the Kashmiri Pandits since 1990, after the exodus and the ethnic cleansing and genocide that took place there in the valley. Way back when I was leader of Brent Council, and we held a conference on the issue a year after the event to report on exactly the tragedies that had happened to the Kashmiri Pandits. And I think I'm the last serving British Member of Parliament to visit Srinagar, which was in February 2016, which is far too long now for any of us not to have been and seen the beauty of the place. And anyone that knows the region will know the beauty of Jammu, the city of temples, Srinagar, with its opportunities for tourism, the opportunities for agriculture, canned goods, for handicrafts, for hydroelectric power, for all sorts of potential. And the one thing that I think impressed me more than anything else when going 4 years ago to Srinagar was the combination of different people of different faiths coming forward and saying, if only we had security in the valley, then we could really make this a thriving employment prospect for everyone, bring new opportunities for everyone, and clearly that's been in abeyance. So the last year since, and of course we got into the discussions of Article 370 and indeed the position over the security in the valley. Clearly we have still many problems to resolve. but I was personally delighted, absolutely delighted, when the Indian government decided to take the step that they put in their election manifesto to abrogate Article 370 and the other amendments to the Constitution, really to bring Jammu and Kashmir into the Union of India properly. As you quite rightly say, Krishna, the position is that this temporary solution put in place in 1947 was allowed to carry on and fester for far too long. We still have many problems to deal with. Obviously, the film shows the progress that's been made. I've heard certain people's disgruntlement with the rate of progress of bringing Jammu and Kashmir into the Union, but I'm quite interested to hear other people's views on that. I think this progress obviously is not as fast as everyone would like, but I think we can only move at the pace at which is possible in some very difficult terrain in times. I think we need to understand that, when we talk about the railways and so on, and the roadways. We still have the problem of the illegal occupation by Pakistan of the part of Jammu and Kashmir. My stance on that has been always that the UN resolutions should be enforced, namely that the Pakistani security forces should leave the illegal occupation of the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, and the entirety of the state should be restored to India as was originally intended by the Maharaja way back at the creation of India and of Pakistan on partition. Until that happens, I suspect we're going to continue with the longest line of control anywhere in the world, and literally thousands of troops on both sides of that line of control. At the moment, Pakistan fails still to prevent the terrorist camps and the acts of terrorism coming across the border. It's a very difficult border for the Indian Army to police, and clearly that's something that is very difficult for things to be maintained. But I think what has to happen here is that by winning the hearts and minds of the people that can benefit from having a job, having employment, seeing more investment, both for education for the young people, but also investment for the farmers and other economic entities, they will see the benefit of actually being a part of India and a part of one of the fastest growing states in terms of the economy anywhere in the world. And of course, as has been described, the demonstration of the benefits of democracy to Jammu and Kashmir within the state of India being, of course, the largest democracy anywhere in the world. I also express, as I always do unfortunately on these calls, my sympathies for the friends and families of those brave Indian soldiers who were murdered by the Chinese soldiers in Ladakh only too recently. And I think that's something that we also have to recognize. It's not just Pakistan, it is also the threat that's posed to China, posed to India from China, that has to be called out on their behalf. I'm also struck that on my visits to Jammu, that here is a peaceful city that has to be defended, temples having to be defended, just demonstrates that the slim line there is, unfortunately, between a peaceful existence and disruption by terrorists. Equally, I think we've got to recognise as well the strategic importance of Jammu and Kashmir to India in terms of its security. Without protecting that, the valley is wide open all the way to Delhi and beyond from a security aspect, and clearly this has to be enforced. I think we should also, not only should we refer, of course, to the Kashmiri Pandits, many of whom are still in refugee facilities outside Jammu and around different parts of the state, but we also have to think of the Dogra community, who have stood full square together with the Kashmiri Pandits against the terrorism that's taken place. And I think one of the things that we have to do is unite various different groups together to combat this terrorism and the high levels of activity that have taken place to disrupt part of India. So I'm happy with the progress that we've made, and I also think we should echo one of the problems we have in the UK. Well, I think we should call this out. Our opponents in the UK, in the Labour Party, have 16 members of their front bench who are supported by Pakistan or by Pakistani occupied Kashmir. They also have obviously take that very strong stance, and this led to the Labour Party passing a very pro-Pakistan, anti-India policy at their sovereign policy making conference last year. We have to combat that and call it out. The reality is that in the UK, if we tried to pass a law that said that women, if they owned property and got married to someone outside the UK, they would lose their right to own their property. If we had laws that discriminated against the LGBT community, say we had a law that said that to work in the civil service you had to be a member of the Church of England, or everyone who was a member of the Church of England was guaranteed a job, and that if you stood in elections in certain parts of Jammu and Kashmir, you had to be of a certain religion and swear an oath to the Pakistan Constitution and the state of Pakistan. I'm afraid if you had all that in the UK, anyone proposing it would rightly be howled down. And the reality is that this is what we have to get across, because far too often we talk about the abrogation of Article 370 and people think that it's some form of India exercising control over Jammu and Kashmir rather than the liberation of people to live their lives to their full potential, regardless of their religion or sex or sexual orientation. So I think from these perspectives, we must trumpet this as a great reform for Jammu and Kashmir and for the Indian Constitution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. I'm sure there will be some questions later on in our question answer session. Thank you so much, Bob. My next speaker is Dr. Vijay Sazawal, and he's going to be speaking to us on what happened on August 5th, 6th in 2019 and why. Just a few words about Dr. Vijay Sazawal as well. Dr. Vijay Sazawal is an international coordinator for IEKF, IEKF and ICKF. He's also the founding member of Indo-American Kashmir Forum and has been served as a chair of IEKF twice. He's a political analyst and a specialist in local governance in community issues. He has written extensively on the political situation in Jammu and Kashmir. Vijay ji regularly interacts with various sections of Kashmir society, including locals and national politicians. Vijay ji, I'll call upon you now to come and enlighten us with your thoughts on what happened on the 5th and 6th of August 2019. Vijay ji.
Thank you. Thank you, Krishna ji. Thank you, Right Honorable Bob Blackman. A very, very inspiring speech. And I think I will speak on behalf of everybody here that it was a marvelous job. You articulated the points very well. And I think you could not have said it any better than, anybody could not have said it any better than that you did. Let me now address the issues as to what happened then, in a sense, put some sort of meat into what the Right Honorable Blackman said, and I would talk about the three aspects of what happened. And one was, and each one has its own sort of a formulation and its own outcome. The first one being historical, the second one being political, and the third one being humanitarian. From the political aspects, it is very clear India had built up its constituent assembly, and in 1949, after a very vigorous debate that extended quite extensively on the subject, it was decided that there will be an Article 370. It was 306A actually originally, but it became Article 370, and it would be temporary. And the idea was that it would give a sort of a comfort, if you will, to having a state where there was a Muslim majority, given that there was a recognition, perhaps they would feel uncertain how to join into India, which was primarily being divided at that time, with Muslims going to Pakistan. And so it was a very controversial one. It wasn't simply proposed and accepted, and eventually everybody agreed, okay, as long as it is temporary, and as long as and it will be up to the people by their constituent assembly or a successive assembly to basically to negate it, and that would give them the assurance. So that's a historical fact. Now, what's also a fact is that a cabinet minister in Prime Minister Nehru's interim cabinet, as a result of this decision, and as a result of some other activities, mainly to do with the interactions with Pakistan in terms of the Delhi Act of 1950, he resigned. So you have actually a cabinet minister in the cabinet of Pandit Nehru resigning on the basis of not having agreed to this decision, and then subsequently actually creating a political, being part of a political party, which was then called Bharatiya Jan Sangh, and its various other names, to fight the elections, which were first elections, which were coming up subsequently in 1951. So essentially, there was right away a recognition that there is a political party being created, primarily because it disagrees with the decision by the cabinet to even grant this temporary resolution. And the name of the gentleman was Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. And Mr. Mukherjee eventually, when the interim government of J&K was formed, he actually went there to basically disapprove the idea that Kashmir is not a part of India. And this was in 1953, and he was jailed and died under mysterious circumstances in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which was then run by the interim Prime Minister Sheikh Abdullah. And to this day, of course, BJP recognizes that death was probably a murder, a political murder. And in a sense, that gave the party a certain sense of a platform that this was a very important step for them, because one of their founding leaders was in fact had dissociated with the cabinet, had resigned from Nehru's cabinet, had formed a political party, and it became an articulation in that regard. Now, having said that, one of the interesting things as a result of the Article 370 was that there was a Kashmir's Constituent Assembly was formulated in 1951, and it was expected that Constituent Assembly would actually take decision on whether or not, to have this temporary provision revoked. Instead, they went ahead and dismantled the Maharaja's regime. They basically removed the monarchy and their powers, and instead of actually proposing the retirement of the Article 370, they actually added to that article by supporting an act under the domicile laws of 35A, which unfortunately, I'm sad to say that in Delhi, when that proposal was submitted by the J&K government in 1954, sort of everybody seemed to be sleeping on the wheel. The state government actually was expecting that the central is going to ask it, when are you going to make a decision on Article 370? Instead, what happened was the cabinet under Pandit Nehru basically took that proposal, accepted it, and passed it on to the president of India to sign it. And so what in effect happened was actually there was then essentially a lock put on the 370, a legal lock, as a result of which it was very difficult to come out of it, because now the only way you could you could have 370 removed was basically not by the Constituent Assembly, but by the successor legislative assemblies. But when the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir was introduced or was brought out in 1957 by the same Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir, that made sure, that Constitution made sure that there would be always the representation from the valley in majority over all other regions of the state. So consequently, what was achieved by the valley, predominantly Muslims, was that in effect there would be no way that Article 370 would be removed. So you have actually a historical fact that, first of all, it's a temporary act. Second, that the Muslims in Kashmir Valley actually found a way to sort of legalize it. And the third, the lock they put on it for them seemed to be something that would not be broken for a long time. And that became the challenge, which was, of course, in the Congress government was kind of sort of hidden under the rug, was not put up for discussion because everybody knew there was no way out of it. As much as it was temporary, there was no way out of it. So then we move into the second. So these are historical facts. Then we move into the second phase, which is political. So here's a party which is saying that is going to be their number one issue if when they get to power. The only problem was, of course, that BJP or its previous organizations were not in a position of power for a long time. In fact, they started with 3 seats in the 1951 elections and slowly moved on. And you had actually a situation in coalition governments in 1996 when Mr. Vijay became a prime minister for 3 days, and in 1998 when he became a prime minister for 13 months. So again, you did not have the ability to make any changes, as much as BJP was still putting that on their political manifesto. So then you had, of course, the first government, which was an NDA government, which stood for a long time, was in 1999. But therein, when they looked at the issue, they realized it was not that simple. It needed a legal unlock. It could not be done without a legal unlock. And so you had essentially to not only have a situation where you have a majority in Lok Sabha and a majority in Rajya Sabha, and of course a prime minister and a president willing to do the cabinet decisions and the presidential signatures, but you also had to have a constitutional way of doing it. And it was agreed that India, being a nation law, it will not do it in any sort of an aggressive manner. It will actually follow the Constitution. So a lot of work started right then, and it, in a sense, came to fruition when the government, after the Manmohan Singh government came to power, and you essentially had at that situation when the basically government constitutionally proposed a method which was using it. So it was a very intricate method. It's legal, very intricate, and they ended up basically using the Article 356 of the Indian Constitution, using a governor's rule in the state, which went down to the president's rule. And I'm not going into the details, but it was a very, very structured constitutional manner of doing it, and then it was put on the vote, and the first house where it was put on the vote was in Rajya Sabha, where BJP did not have a majority. So the idea was it had to test itself in Rajya Sabha first in order to make sure that it will have the majority. Now, one of the tactics that BJP used was it attracted other political parties on precisely the points that Bob mentioned, which was it attracted people on the basis of the fact that the Dalits were precluded from having property and voting rights in the Kashmir, from LGBT having rights, from Kashmiri women not having full rights to the. So that actually attracted other members of the different political parties. so that it got the majority that it sought in the Rajya Sabha on the 5th of August 2019. And then, of course, on the next day, on the 6th, a year back, the same act was put on, the same bill was put on the floor of the Lok Sabha. And in that one, again, BJP already had a majority, but BJP wanted to make sure that it was inclusive. It had other people's support as well. And the same thing happened. So in Rajya Sabha, they got 2/3 of the people voting in. In Lok Sabha, it was something like 81 or 82% of those voting in. So the takeaway from the political side is number one, it was done constitutionally, and number two, it was not just BJP which eventually voted in its. It was basically multiple parties, political parties of India. So it was a parliamentary decision that when the president signed the act, which was done on the 6th of August, that he was signing. I'm sorry, on the 9th of August, he was signing to a bill that has support of BJP and other members as well. And then, of course, it came into effect on the 31st of October. So in a sense, you can argue November, December, January, and February. That it has been really effective only 4 months, because right from March, we are in the COVID-19 phase. And so it's unfair to really judge a government. And if you saw the tape, you have to recognize a lot of those work was done actually in the first 4 months after the Article 370 was removed. So that is the second takeaway. The third one is humanitarian, and it's close to my heart, because I was one of those people who always felt giving greater autonomy to people is a good thing, because it gives them right of self empowerment. And I as a Democrat, and in my outlook, and as a follower of liberty, I feel that's a good thing. But then Kashmir is an example of how that liberty, that self-empowerment, basically went rogue. We had essentially a situation over the years which was steadily getting worse and worse. I had an occasion in early, about a decade back in 2010, to actually address an audience in Kashmir. And I told them that I don't know how long the Indian government is going to actually tolerate what's happening here. And there are, of course, they had a very simplistic answer. They said, well, what can they do? The Article 370 cannot be changed. I mean, it is what it is. But nobody actually said, Dr. Sazawal, tell us, how can we improve the situation? What should we be doing? No, they didn't want to hear that. They only wanted to know what we are doing is right, because nobody can touch us. And then in 2012, actually, I gave a presentation, and I'll actually read you just the first page so you can get an idea. This is a presentation made in 2012, and I call it the dysfunctional state. Similarities exist between J&K and failed sub-Saharan states of Africa, which have acquired tags like corruptocracies and chaosocracies. Public loyalty is almost evenly divided among politicians, either elected, rejected, separatists, or militants. Controlling the state machinery and acquiring unfettered possession of public funds have become primary purpose of political contestation. The politics is increasingly patrimonial and spoils-oriented. There is a continuing contest for political and economic domination between elites, politicians, and separatists, both armed and unarmed. The state is unable to provide basic services and security. Consequently, J&K is experiencing a triple crisis of governance: lack of accountability, lack of rule of the law, inability to resolve economic issues. In other words, basically, simply said, it was basically behaving like a Chechen state or some other a desperate area, Sicily of Italy. I don't mean to be rude towards Italians, but basically it was basically a lawless region, where security and issues of national integration, national security, and other issues were being done, not taken care of. And I actually had a triangle, which I call the triangle of misery, where the apex was poor political leadership and dysfunctional state institutions, and you had at the other two corners a corrupted civil society and religious extremism, and increasing gap between the rich and the poor. So what I'm saying is, it was inevitable, not only from the point of view of national security and national interest, that national integration that we already talked about, and MP Blackman mentioned, but it was also a fact that the state really governance was absolutely poor. The Transparency International, based in Berlin, listed J&K as the most corrupt state in India, and it gave indices on all the parameters of where the corruption was. So in a sense, whatever money the Indian government was sending to Kashmir, and Kashmir was pretty much living off the dole of the Indian taxpayer, it was pretty much getting into the pockets of the people. And if you ask me, many people have asked me, what is the differentiation between the haves and the have-nots? It's very simple in Kashmir. If you are an English-speaking Kashmiri, you have benefited from the system. You don't want to change because and that is roughly around 35 to 40% people. But there you have 60% people at the bottom end who are out in the villages who have really seen no development at all. And this is the part that where basically the discontent was coming from. And so Kashmiri politicians had found a good way, and today they are still climbing the same fervor because they would like to get back, and they're missing all the goodies that they've been getting, they used to be used to. And the fact is that Kashmir needs a change. And I think if you have to get back to the statehood, they have to earn it. Politicians have to show why and how should the state again be given its statehood, because they failed, they forfeited that right. When India gave them self-empowerment and autonomy, they misused it, and they misused it to serve their own personal and family friends. So that, in effect, is the reason why the decisions of August 5th and 6th were taken. And I believe it's too early to yet say whether or not things will improve or how they will improve. As I said, only 4 months really we had opportunity to implement a new vision there. But I'm very confident that things will improve for the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay ji. Very inspiring speech. Thank you. My next speaker is Shri Anil Bhanot, OBE. I'd just like to mention a few words about Anil ji. Shri Anil ji Bhanot is the Director of Interfaith Relations. Anil ji has been a founding member of the Hindu Council UK, having served as General Secretary of the Council for many years. He has been working very closely with the IEKF and on the issues related to the displaced community and Kashmiri Hindus. He really is very, very committed to really highlight the genocide of Kashmiri Hindus. Anil ji also wears many hats, but I don't like to mention them here. It will take too long, but he works for many charities as well. But Anil ji, would like to ask you to come and speak to us about the inequalities of Article 370.
Thank you, Krishna ji. And hello and namaste to everyone. We've had a long relationship with the Indo-European Kashmir Forum right from the beginning, from 1994 when we launched Hindu Council UK. In fact, Krishna ji is the third president, the longest serving one, which we are very happy that we worked so closely together for so many years now. And the inequalities, I think Bob Blackman and Vijay ji has already elucidated anyway, but briefly, those sort of, the things that Nehru put put in this article, you know, the right for no land, or the women's inequalities, and against the LGBT community and the Dalits, these sort of major inequalities. I mean, they could not pass the Western democracy, you know, or the UN, and yet some of these Western media people, including the BBC, you know, they sort of raise their arms high when the Article 370 was abrogated. And Bob Blackman said that, oh, maybe they think it's more about control. What control? I mean, it's a democracy. India is the largest democracy in the world. What control? If it was about control, then as Vijay ji has said, when BJP was formed, they would have done something then, you know. But India, the Hindu mind, especially, you know, from the Vedic side, it has a democratic way of working, you know. We've had democracies right through our systems, and even including the LGBT community, for instance. Now, you know, there's this conversion therapy that we are seeking a ban on. I'm in another committee, and it's really only the Hindu scripture, Rig Veda, that recognizes the third gender. And all through Hindu history, we've never really discriminated against the LGBT community. We haven't promoted them, but nor do we discriminate against them, you know. We accept them for what it is, you know. These you know, there are a lot of equalities already built into our system, into our Hindu way of thinking, and that is one of the reasons we are Sanatan Dharma. That is one of the reasons we are an enduring civilization for the last 10,000 years, from 8000 BCE of Mehrgarh civilization. And people should remember that. You know, even yesterday about Ram Janambhoomi, BBC reported, I'm digressing, but let me just say this, because I'm in the UK, and I want to say that, you know, some of the reports that we get, they are not, you know, they lack, in fact, our value system, you know, which is in some ways is more equal than these people who report on us. That the Janam Ram Bhoomi, you know, they said, oh, they've taken over this 500 years old mosque, but they wouldn't mention that Supreme Court actually assessed the evidence that there was a temple before, you know. They didn't mention that. So this is how misreporting happens. And today, even from the Indian High Commission, I got a email saying that there's a lot of misreporting about Kashmir going on, and you know, they were trying to sort of give us the positive run on it. And the positive run, I mean, as Bob G has also said, that there are things that are happening. But I mean, I have a NGO in India as well, and we are partnering with the Common Services Centers Division in one of the ministries. And now these Common Services Centers, what they do is they go to the rural areas and they develop, you know, they actually bring about entrepreneurship from the local people and set up these centers to provide services and to bring them up, you know, from the rural to the urban sides, so to speak, you know. And that's what's happening. I mean, I get those reports from them as well. This is what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir. And there are women actually who are running these centers, you know. I think in one of the videos you show, the first video you showed, it said that this one person was saying that, oh, there's electricity in our village now. So these are the sort of developments that are happening from the grassroots, actually, you know. And I think, you know, we need to sort of now bring those more into the media forums and so on, so that they see that, as Vijay ji has said, that he may like autonomy, but what he hasn't said is that the basis upon which any democracy can flourish, autonomy or whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter, you can have that. But the basis must be of equal grounds. Otherwise, it will not work. And Article 370, it was just full of inequalities. How can it work? It was actually nepotism. It was actually serving two dynasties, one of Nehru's and the other one of Sheikh Abdullah's. And they kept control and they created these inequalities deliberately, even if I don't know, but in order to keep control. And there were so many lies, like even Nehru's own daughter, Indira Gandhi, he changed her name to Gandhi, adopted Mahatma Gandhi's name, These are all lies to fool people, the masses of India, the rural India, the rural, and this is where I think you can have autonomies, but you must show that equality that, our Sanatan Dharma has always cherished. It will not do anything else, but it will always, those equalities are very important to it. If we have a god, we have a goddess, in every way we have those equalities, you see. Whereas, I don't think it was just to appease the Muslims, to make that inequality of for women in the Article 370. I don't think so. I think it's deeper than that. It was more about political controls, and that political control, evidently, we have seen it for the last 60, 70 years through just mainly through this Sheikh Abdullah's dynasty, and that's the proof, that's the evidence. So I think I've got to go actually, but I think I can go on and on, but with certainly here last decade we did quite a few parliamentary sessions, and Emma Nicholson, she was always very supportive with us at the parliament, and we raised a lot of awareness. Krishna ji, every year, she wants to do something, and Rajneesh ji, our new general secretary, is helping her. So I think we have to continue this battle really, because it's not about control. It's not even about this autonomy. These are, it's about equalities. Equalities where we must have for every person, That's what we are here for, and that's what our faith demands as from Hindu Council UK. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anilji. Excellent, very good. Thank you. Our next speaker is also from Hindu Council UK, the chair of Hindu Council UK, Satya Minhas ji. Sri Satya ji, I'd just like to say a few words about Satya ji as well. Sri Satya ji Minhas is a trustee and a chairperson of Hindu Council UK, and has served as the deputy chair of Metropolitan Police Hindu Society for many, many years. Satya ji also wears too many hats. If I go on saying how much he does for other charities and other areas, so it will take a long time. He's extremely committed to the cause of displaced Kashmiri community. He has raised concerns many times about the refugee camps in Jammu, and he has always been very keen to do something for these camps. Satya ji has really also been very concerned about the terrorist attacks in the valley, and he always raises the concerns about how the displaced KP community live and how they have been treated unfairly. So I like to call Satya ji to talk to us why state reorganization was necessary. Thank you, Satya ji.
Namaskar, everybody. I'm so delighted to be here, join you on this very important discussion, and thank you, Krishna ji. The Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act 2019 was passed by the Parliament, enacting the division of the state of Jammu and Kashmir into 2 union territories, to be called Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Union Territory of Ladakh. The reorganization, as previous speakers have mentioned, took place on 31st of October 2019. These changes were required to pull the state out of years of insurgency and terrorism, to remove corruptions of the highest order in the Jammu and Kashmir state government, and to introduce governance at the local level with the panchayat elections and block regional elections, provide equality, thereby look after the well-being, better education and economic prosperity for the common people. Most of them had been living in dire poverty. The people, to start with, the people of Ladakh are very brave and loyal to their motherland, India. As per strategic point of view, the development of Ladakh was the topmost priority of the central government to keep a check on China and Pakistan. It was a long outstanding demand of the residents of Ladakh, as the funds allocated by the central government to the state government in Jammu and Kashmir were not reaching Ladakh for local development, as this area was ignored by the state government. The government also needed to give Ladakh a unique opportunity to preserve its distinct history, which had nothing to do with Islam. Union territories were better placed to ensure less discrimination, better central control, and direct intervention without engaging in local politics for investment and capital generation. Competent authority at local level needed to be empowered to take suo motu notice and evict encroachers from properties Hindus left behind in Kashmir from 1990. Administration at local level was also better placed to evict locals from properties they might have purchased from Hindu Pandits through pressure and intimidation. Sale deeds now could be nullified. Legal protection granted to anti-nationals in Jammu and Kashmir 42 years ago needed to be revoked. Those facing Public Safety Act 1978 needed to be put in any jail, even outside outside Jammu and Kashmir. Do apologize. Chief ministers and ex-chief ministers were getting too many perks and facilities, including accommodation and vehicles. These needed to be withdrawn from these people, which includes Farooq Abdullah, Umar Azad, and Mehbooba Mufti. All universities and their curriculum needed to be under a central control and not being Kashmir-centric. Hindu shrines were controlled by the Dharmat Trust or respective shrine boards. These boards could be better controlled by the central government within the Home Ministry. Jammu and Kashmir Waqf Board UKAF was too autocratic and considered to be anti-national. It was better if New Delhi took charge of their assets and functioning, which till now were created by contributors and niyaz from Kashmiri Muslims. It was also realized that all forest lands, golf courses, and tourist development authorities would benefit if these were directly controlled by New Delhi. They can issue a lot, lease, or provide prime land and facilities to anyone from India now. All powers of nominations by Jammu and Kashmir's chief minister to university boards or Waqf boards were full of corrupt politics and were not operating fairly and needed to be addressed. Perhaps a number of Kashmiri IS officers had not been carrying out their responsibilities in an ethical and professional manner. They needed to be given less important positions, and it was felt that local officials could run the administration from Jammu better. Land banks of thousands of acres of land could have been better if allotted to non-state subjects for investment, industry and prosperity. The list can continue. All in all, the BJP government under the most capable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, and the Home Ministry and the Home Minister has tried to put a system in place and taken first steps to get things right and shown the local people the way forward for equality and prosperity. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you very much, Satya ji. Excellent rundown on the state reorganization. Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Ashok Koul, a long time president of Indo-Canadian Kashmir Forum. Ashok ji is a social and political activist. He is very actively lobbying the Indian and the state governments on the issues of displaced community. He has made representations to the United Nations on behalf of Kashmiri Pandits who were forced to leave their homeland in 1990. He has raised these concerns on various forums. May I call now Ashok ji to the...
Thank you, Krishna ji.
Going to talk to us what the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act means for Jammu and Kashmir citizens and specific Pandit demands in August 5th era. Ashok.
Thank you, Krishna ji. Thank you. I shall primarily focus on the Kashmiri Pandit issue. Let me at the outset thank the Indian Prime Minister, Right Honorable Modi ji, and the Home Minister, Honorable Amit Shah ji, for freeing the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and for that matter, entire India, from the shackles of barely legal Articles 370 and 35A of the Indian Constitution. These articles were not only regressive and repressive, but openly allowed the Valley Muslims to practice racism, bigotry, and human rights abuses unabatedly. Something to reflect on. Even the Supreme Court of India could not intervene or rule fairly in several cases of injustices that were brought to its attention from 1965 onwards. Of course, over the years, the people from Jammu and Ladakh suffered greatly in terms of lack of development or getting the central government, their fair share of central government funds. But historically and culturally, indigenous Kashmiris, the Kashmiri Pandits, bore the brunt of the wrath unleashed by successive valley-centric Muslim legislatures since India's independence. This is a fact that nobody can deny. Speaking from personal knowledge and refreshing my memories as a child growing up in the valley, one became acquainted with the details of looting of Kashmiri Pandit businesses in 1948, how Land Reform Act of 1950 was differently implemented in the valley to indulge in the biggest land grab in the country, where farmland owned by the Aboriginal Kashmiris, of course, we're Aboriginals, therefore we own the land. It was literally taken away from us. Even our shrines that were scattered all over the valley for thousands of years were not spared from this land grab exercise. One got acquainted with the fact how Moneylenders Act was used to take over or defunct our businesses in tourism and cottage industries. Of course, being more educated than the Valley Muslims, it had taken Kashmiri Pandits over 130 years to develop these businesses after Maharaja Ranjit Singh of Punjab routed the Afghans in 1819. So these businesses were in development from 1819 onwards. Valley Muslims were largely what we call dastakars or craftsmen who became the bosses of the businesses overnight using the cover of Moneylenders Act and Article 370. It is, but you know, I laugh today. It is somewhat ironic that the economy in the valley has not moved even an inch beyond what I call the Shal, Dushale, Namde Gabbe economy since its takeover by the Muslims from us. And I wonder why. Being subjected to corrupt and discriminatory practices was rampant in all fields of life for Pandits, from jobs, training, trade, and business. Merit mattered little because of Article 370. And as a personal experience, in 1967, when Sadiq was the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, he was the so-called left wing of the Muslim intellectuals. I remember applying for admission in the local engineering college. I managed to get into an IIT, but obviously I was not smart enough to get into the local regional engineering college in Srinagar because admission rules in professional colleges or jobs work differently for Pandits and Muslims because of Article 370. Today, some warped Muslim intellectuals have even the audacity of accusing the Pandits of indulging in a culture of exclusivity, despite this subterfuge I have recalled. Being proud, as a Kashmiri Pandit, I am an Indian, I am a Hindu. Being proud of one's heritage and civilization does not make Pandits exclusivists. Civilizationally, we are expressing our Indianness. Well, Valley Muslims got away with murder because of Article 370, and literally so on January 19, 1990, when we were subjected to Relu, Salu, Ya Galyu slogans from the mosques, and we were completely ethnically cleansed from the valley. The Muslim-dominated administration and their political masters, Abdullahs were talked about, Muftis are there, and so on, had little regard for Kashmiri Hindus, the Indian legal system, and let alone India's constitution. They went against all three all the time. Let me give an example. In 1997, the three overseas forums, Shubhan Durrani will know this, we petitioned the National Human Rights Commission of India to rule on the forced exodus and ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Hindus. When the Attorney General of Jammu and Kashmir was summoned by the Commission to explain his government's position, the Attorney General, who was of course a Valley Muslim, argued that National Human Rights Commission had no jurisdiction over Jammu and Kashmir because of Article 370. So this Article 370 and 35A, in my view, had created, it reveals the typical mindset that this article had created among Valley Muslims, and literally and totally, I would say, fomented disdain for India's democratic institutions and her laws. It was, as Vijay said, it was a lawless society. The National Human Rights Commission chair, of course, shut this man up by saying that Pandits had been forced to flee the valley because the state government was unable to provide adequate security. And security certainly was within the purview of the central government jurisdiction or institutions. So he shut him up and the case went on, and we eventually got the ruling in June 1999. But what I want to emphasize is how this mindset permeated throughout the Muslim society, and which is clearly revealed by taking into account that today, over 427 temples have been destroyed in the valley. Hundreds of our cultural institutions have been vandalized. Thousands of Hindu shops have been looted, and over 50,000 Hindu houses gutted or looted. Surely, they cannot argue, Kashmiri Muslim cannot argue that Pakistan sent its tribes and an army to do this. Simply put, it was the local Muslims living in the valley who indulged in all of these activities in the name of Islam. Let's be clear on that issue. However, moving forward, after Modi ji and Amit Shah ji gave us the abrogation of Article 370, the first order of business has to be to pass an ordinance to restore the Hindu shrines and cultural institutions. This can be done today because we do not need a political process to get this done. Secondly, the process of obtaining first incident reports, FIRs, for businesses and properties previously owned by Kashmiri Hindus must be set up, and mechanisms for compensating the victims of these crimes must be clearly defined and executed, and people must be brought to justice as well. A lip service will not do. Most importantly, arrangements must be made to reverse ethnic cleansing by creating a township or a smart city in the valley where our youngsters who are scattered all over India and the globe can come back to earn a living. This will enable the diversification of the economy and bring new economy to the valley. As per NHRC ruling in June 1999, fulfilling this obligation of return and rehabilitation back in the valley is a legal obligation on the part of Government of India. Finally, the community must also be politically empowered to bring its issues forward in view of the new dispensation. Immediately though, the Lieutenant Governor should set up consultative mechanisms for dealing with immediate problems of Pandits who are currently living in the valley, because they're almost living like prisoners, or stuck in camps in Jammu and Udhampur areas. And finally, let me close with a word for our Kashmiri Muslim friends who are living in the valley today. For them, Kashmir may be simply a piece of real estate that they have acquired or forcibly acquired over the centuries. But for Kashmiri Pandits, it is, because we are the Aboriginals, that what defines an Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. It is our sacred land. Whether it is Sharda Desham, Kashyap Vihara, or Kashyap Mar, or if the Saptarishi Bhumi, this is where the written Indian civilization came into being, and no Indian anywhere in the world should ever forget that. I end with that note. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very informative, Ashokji. Thank you. We have a treat in store. We have kept one of the speakers who is from Jammu, lost of all, but Vijay ji is going to on disturbing trends that impact Kashmiri Pandit.
Thank you. I think it has gone on well so far. I was going to bring to the attention the fact that, as people would have attested from having seen the video earlier about some of the achievements under the new rule, that there was one dimension that was missing in that particular narration, and that had to do with the Kashmiri Pandits and their future. And that is, in fact, for me, a source of concern as to what the central government's plans are. I belong to that particular belief, and there are many, many people who are accompanying me in that belief, which is that there can be no future solution or even a path forward defined without the involvement, participation of Kashmiri Pandits, whether it is in the economic future of the valley or it is in the political dispensation in the state. So I am yet to see the progress in that area. I feel like the government had a plan. It was executed very well on the 5th and 6th of August last year. And I think after that, the kind of the follow-up probably was not as well defined. And I think that's for a reason, because they really didn't know how things will work out. And things have by and large worked out, I think, in the way the government actually had optimistically anticipated or predicted. But the question then still remains about the return of Kashmiri Pandits. The thing that the government has said so far is, in fact, that we have, we have people who have joined the civil service in Kashmir under the Prime Minister's employment scheme. They were brought from the refugee camps and they were taken to various transit camps in the 10 districts of the valley. And some of those housing areas are not well developed. And I think the only commitment I have seen so far from the government is in that area, which is to essentially build them decent housing in those 10 locations, small townships, if you will, to make sure that they are held there securely and comfortably. But to me, the bigger issue still awaits some clarity, and that is return of the Kashmiri Pandits. And the way, I'm going to be honest here, I think the way the state is structured right now, the way that the Indian government or the J&K government allowed the destruction of its lands, as Ashokji said, our sacred lands, the destruction and desecration of our lakes, our green fields, our forests. I mean, there is a sense of depression. I was in the valley only a few months back, and I can tell you, you really don't want to go back there. The place is ugly. The place is dirty. The place is really different than what it was 20, 30, 40 years back. It has progressively gone worse. There is no, quite frankly, any desire for any Kashmiri Pandit to honestly return in that particular state. So what we have proposed and what we are actually pushing for is really a new greenfield township, a township that will attract our young people. So we're not talking about something that can happen in the next 1 year, 2 year, 5 years. It can even take two decades. But we're looking for a greenfield where essentially you create a new infrastructure with emphasis on quality education, health, information, automation, and mass transit systems with new high-tech residential and office buildings. So it is a massive project. It's a project that will be a public-private partnership. It's a project that could attract, let's say, our children or grandchildren who may be working in cities like Pune or Gurgaon or Bangalore to come back and say, well, why don't I return back now that the conditions or situation in the valley I'll be facing are similar to ones that I have in the rest of the country. So we are talking about a major commitment by the central government in this new township. And so far we have not seen it. And it requires a commitment in terms of essentially at least admitting a roadmap will be built, admitting some schedules where the plans will be discussed. But so far, there has been no such discussion. And I again repeat, I do not believe at the end of the day, you can have a solution and stability in the valley where without the active participation and in fact, I would argue guidance of its aboriginal people, the Kashmiri Pandits. And that is the missing piece, as far as I'm concerned, in whatever the central government has mentioned. And this is a message that I would like to take that back to to the people up there, people in the party and all that. And now I'm going to transition myself into, having said that, into our, what I will consider that we saved the best for the last, so to say, which is our next speaker. And before I mentioned that, I do want to recognize that the Delhi's representative in Kashmir, the LG, the Lieutenant Governor, has changed. Yesterday, the previous governor resigned to take up a job with the civil service back in New Delhi, and we have a new governor by the name of Manoj Sinha, who has taken over. Manoj Sinha is a three-time parliamentarian from BJP, so he is politically oriented, and wonderful news to Ashokji and myself is he is actually a BHU graduate. He is actually an engineer from the Institute of Technology, and having done BTech as well as MTech from BHU, from the Indian Institute of Technology. So he's an alumni group. So at least we feel, I'm sure, as other BHU people feel, he will do a great job. So let me now move on and really introduce our what I consider to be a very important speaker for us, and that is Shri Girdhari Lal Rana, popularly known as Ajay Bharti, who is one of the official spokesperson for BJP in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, and he has graduated with BSc Agriculture Economics as a subject. He has also academic courses in journalism to his credit, and he is one of the directors of the Defense Innovators and Industry Association in the Indian industry. He was the editor of the Swadeshi Patrika, both Hindi and English, from 2007 to 2017. And in 2017, it's not that he was asked to leave, but he was actually promoted up. He was elected to the Jammu and Kashmir Legislative Council. He became a elected member of the Jammu and Kashmir Legislative Council, a position that he kept until the assembly was dissolved on 31st October 2019, when the UT was announced in there. His contact with RSS started at a young age, and he has remained active, and actually has been now a full-timer for over 4 years. He is also, actually for me, a very important aspect, which is he's very closely associated with Jammu and Kashmir Study Center. And let me add here, when I talked earlier in my previous presentation on the strategy for assimilation of, for the removal of Article 370 by legislative and constitutional means, Jammu and Kashmir Study Center was one of the key intellectual centers for the for the BJP to come back with a constitutional way of removing Article 370, and I'm very happy to say that Mr. Girdhari Lal Rana ji is member of that from its inception, and continues to be an important member of the central team of JKSC. He is considered to be one of the most perceptive and forward-thinking political minds. His work is in every field of activity is outstanding, and in a short period of time, as the member of Legislative Council, he emerged as a valuable and sought-after public person. I may add here, I consider him one of my close friends, and I'm indeed honored and privileged to introduce him to this audience, and he remains my friend, and I'm proud of it. Thank you very much. Mr. Ajay Bharti ji, please speak. Unmute yourself, Ajay Bharti ji.
Ajay Bharti ji, are you there? Have we lost him?
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Sazawal sir, for your kind words. Am I audible?
Yes.
Is it okay? Thank you. To begin with, I must first pay tributes to one Sajjad Ahmed Pandit, who was brutally murdered this morning. He was one of the sarpanchs of the Bharatiya Janata Party in Kulgam district. We, in the last 48 hours, have the second incident, terror incident on the BJP workers in Kashmir. In fact, this is the Western disturb, which affects not only weather in Kashmir, but the political weather also. And after thanking organizers, IAKF, IEKF, and Dr. Krishna, Bhan, Dr. Sazawal in particular, and all other panelists, I must stress here, underline here, the most difficult thing which we face in Jammu and Kashmir is the disturbances from the people, organizations, and countries from the western border of Jammu and Kashmir. So, if our friends across the world can take care of that, I can assure you that Jammu Kashmir will be a very peaceful place. I will not repeat what has been already said because not needed. For future vision, two aspects need to be taken care of, and they are being taken care of. One of them is the political divisive politics which was practiced all these years in Kashmir. When I talk of divisive politics, I will refer to not only what was done to the religious minorities, even within the majority community, there are sections of the population which were discriminated against and they were not given any voice. I will take two examples to explain what I mean to say. One is the SC/STs in Kashmir which belong to the Muslim faith. Say for example, Gujars. Gujars of Kashmir Valley are worse off than the Gujars in Jammu region. Why was it so? Secondly, have a cursory look on the political organizations of Jammu Kashmir, particularly the Kashmir-centric organizations, political organizations. Now, most important, I am not talking about, I am just referring to the organizational structure. Now, every political organization has its units down to the block level. Leave blocks aside, take to the district level organizational structures only, and you will find out that most of the people, around 85 to 90% people occupying those posts at district level, including the important post of president, belong to one dominant community only. No others are allowed to enter that space. And since they are not even in the political organization, they are not in a position to influence the government policy also. And second, which Dr. Vijay Sazawal earlier referred to, is the governance model which is dependent here. There are so many examples, some were quoted by Ashok also, but even the public good for the common people, leave aside minorities, I'm leaving aside for a moment religious minorities. Now take for example Kashmir Valley. It is being referred these days in three parts: North, Central, and South. Now North Kashmir is almost three districts of North Kashmir is around 7,000 square kilometers. But the political representation is not in proportion to its population or the area. Within Valley also, Jammu and Ladakh, we know how they were discriminated and constantly discriminated in an illegal manner, immoral manner. Within Valley also, there is the discrimination. The point is that a few hundred families, the neo-elite which got created after 1947, which monopolized power, which manipulated positions of privilege, they did not allow any other person or the community or the section of the population to enter ruling or to participate in the decision making and the this political process of the ruling dispensation. This is what has changed after August 2019. And the impact is felt on the ground. Now, just one example, the Western media or media of the ecosystem of the lobbies have been creating and manufacturing stories. But till date, they could not manufacture or create a story or a video where they could see, they could show people of Kashmir Valley demonstrating for the release of their leaders. Not a single video or a single news clip is like that where people were asking to release these leaders. Why is it so? It's simple because the people there are also fed up with them. But as was rightly said, to control emotions is the only reason why that anger that was diverted towards Delhi. And now New Delhi is directly interacting with the people. And a new shaking is happening on the ground. I have talked about two of our branches being attacked just in last 48 hours. Around 40,000 ground level leaders are involving in the governance now. This government has not only assured a 25 lakh cover to every punch or the sarpanch, but also created unique thing about Jammu and Kashmir now is that a CDF, a constituency development fund, has been created, which has been kept at disposal of a block level head, this BDO or a sarpanch. Now 25 lakhs in a small block at the disposal of, besides this is imagine how it is happening on the ground and the leadership is emerging from the ground. And I am sure in next decade or so, we will find out that this old type of leadership is replaced by new, enthusiastic, optimistic people, and they understand not only Kashmir, but Delhi and rest of the India also. I must be, I think you must also be knowing it, that people of Kashmir, the Kashmir Muslim society, now owning property in the rest of the country is much more than the numbers of the Hindu minority community. Just take example of Sainik Homes, one of the posh colonies in New Delhi. Almost 50 to 55%, some say it is around 60%, people belong to the Kashmiri Muslim society. So they know that there is no discrimination. What was being told to them was fake, was false. So this is changing now, and the governance model which is being adapted and with the aid of technology is changing not only the mindsets but the lives of the people at ground in remote area. And that was demonstrated in this pandemic. We can see that how it was controlled in spite of the fact that we have now more numbers being tested and getting COVID positive. But the treatment, everyone is appreciating how this administration took it. Healthcare system was so much improved. Video has shown some projects about what the investments happened after 29 August 5th. But this is besides what is happening on the ground in higher education. There was a habit in Kashmir, and all those who watchers must be knowing that during election times you will announce some projects, but they were never completed. Taken up, and some of them are complete. There is one bridge recently which dominated the news in every part of this world. A bridge connecting Shopian with Anantnag. After 70 years, the demand was for last 70 years. It got completed because last year you pumped in the not only money, but made sure that work is done. There is now not only transparency, accountability also. Now every penny you spend is to be accounted for. You have to give utilization certificates, then only second installment comes. And that is why we see a lot of projects which are getting completed in time. Now there is e-tendering system. You cannot have any public work done without e-tendering above 1 lakh rupees. 80,000 crore rupee package which Prime Minister announced when he came to Srinagar in January 2019, they are being speeded up. The implementation is being speeded up. We have now going to have that from next year, all the year round connectivity with Zojila. Zojila pass will be completed in 2026. The intake capacity of the funds has been improved to the level that now you can have, this year we have the budget, planned budget of around 1 lakh crores. Earlier, there was no capacity to utilize, funds were being returned. Welfare schemes have been increased, and there is one scheme which will start soon, that the process is already complete, universal health care insurance. Up to 5 lakh rupees, every family will get insurance up to 5 lakh rupees. So this is what is happening on the ground, and people are appreciating it. People across the faiths, across the regions on the ground are appreciating it and are identifying with it. But yes, there are some certain challenges also. I agree with that. But that has to be taken care of and is being taken care of in two things. Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir has a uniqueness, we know that. But that unique identity has been faked over last few decades. Now we need to go back to the actual identity. And for that, I will, all of you who have studied in Kashmir University or have known about it, must revisit the official anthem of Kashmir University. It was written by Professor Rahman Rahisa, the Jnanpith Award winner. And unfortunate is the same that when Jnanpith was awarded to him by Dr. Manmohan Singh's regime, it hardly made a news. It was on the 3rd page of Kashmir newspapers. That aside, but what does he say? He worships Kashmir as Mother Kashmir, where all the fonts of knowledge are available to the mother. And he talks about that, if I will have to read that, O Mother Kashmir, O you flow like Vatasta of Gnosis through our bosoms. O Mother Kashmir, you willed and this seat of learning came into being. O Mother Kashmir, formulation of knowledge made a leap at your will, and yours was the intent which bodied forth what we behold around us. You are wisdom of our past, which bodied forth into what we behold around us. So this real identity, the Sharda Peeth which was mentioned here, or the center of knowledge, it needs to be and people understand it. When we interacted with even the illiterate masses of Kashmir, all those people who are from Kashmir must be remembering it, that there was a saying in Kashmir, Hazrat Adamas zai gobar, oitirat avrin oit kabar. That Adam had 2 sons, one decided to bury their dead, other decided to cremate them. Now this is still being remembered here, but the politics and the Western disturbances makes them look on other ones. Now they have an alternative. They can raise their voice, and they are raising their voice. This will be assertively said in coming days. I am sure about it, and we will have. This was also mentioned by, I suppose, Satya ji. That is, there was an element of such type of people in the administration also who resisted these changes. Being a member of the upper house of the Jammu and Kashmir Legislative Council, I have seen how digitization was resisted by none less than secretary level officers, because they knew that once they become accountable, they can not hide their corruption. And by the way, we have a lot of people either behind the bars or ready to be moved behind bars because of their corrupt practices. I am looking also at the time, so I am conscious of the time limits. But what I mean to say, 2 challenges are there. One is that what Western countries and people among them, including what UK is doing, which was mentioned by Bob also. One is that. Another challenge is the technology challenge. Yes, digitization and technology is helping us reach out to the masses in short time at a very low cost. But cyber security is also a serious issue which is affecting us, because recently we had this power development department's website hacked to the same level that for 15-20 days they could not generate bills also. So the challenges which rest of the world also faces, particularly on the cyber field, is challenge here also. And those who are sending mercenaries and spreading misinformation about Kashmir, about Jammu and Kashmir, needs to be handled in the rest of the world. Jammu and Kashmir people will handle its position locally much better and will handle separatists also. You must have heard about that news also, where separatists agree that now people do not recognize them, and their internal bickerings have come to the surface, where there was their misconduct has also come about the seats, medical seats and all that. And now people are, you will have to visit the websites where they put some news. The comments below tell these leaders, including separatist leaders and so-called mainstream leaders, please bring your children first. We will sacrifice along with them, not without them. So the people are very aware there. And this awareness is going to increase with every passing day. Dr. Sazawal referred to the community. I also belong to the community. I'm a victim myself, have suffered, and this focus on education has to be seen in the what happened in 90 also, and the 10 by 12 tent, where we did not prefer, our parents did not prefer to bring a cooler. They purchased, they did not purchase a cooler. They deposited fee of their kids so that education can be taken forward. This is in 90s, up to 95 to 2000. But I can assure first one thing, that the BJP leadership, and as I talk about the personal interaction with top leadership, including respected Home Minister sir, fully aware of it. They assure it in everything. And that is reflected also, but we choose to ignore that. Even just yesterday, when Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister was mentioning about different Ramayanas, he did not ignore Kashmiri Ramayana, Ram Avatar Charitra by Prakash Ram Kurigan. You will see in every budget speech, there is reference to the Kashmiris. Dinanath Nadim, who was ignored by the so-called Kashmiri fake identity torch bearers, was remembered by Nirmala Sitaram. Yes, there are challenges on the ground. This will be taken care of. That is assurance from our top leadership, and that is also reflected on the ground also. But the challenges will be met by and by with the passage of the time. Encroachment, there will be a special team which will look after the unnecessary amendment has been made during this adaptation of the central and the state laws, that now the authority which is in charge of taking care of our immovable property will not have to issue any notice to the occupier. Once he or she is convinced that this has been occupied illegally and belongs rightfully to the displaced Hindu, that authority is authorized to use force. This is not a small amendment, it is huge, and its impact is delayed only because of COVID pandemic, this Chinese virus. Otherwise, it would have already begun. Similarly, about the political rights, we have a delimitation commission in place. Community has to represent to them, and I am almost sure that some side of the way, if there were Anglo-Indian interests reserved or protected during Constituent Assembly of India, and they had a reservation, whatever is the mechanism, I cannot talk about mechanism right now, but our political interests will be also secured, I am sure about it. About the physical location, there are certain differences, yes, because of logical and all that. For that, I must share with you and must appeal to all you that we must come together, address this, because they cannot be discussed on a public platform. There are certain issues which need to be discussed privately, and then solutions forwarded to the concerned authorities. I am, for example, there is a proposal which we have moved, and the administration has agreed that we will develop a Marathon Tirth Kshetra, because Marathon Mutton is an important place for all of us. It is on the way to the holy cave of Amarnath also, and the Sun Temple is there. So it will be developed as a Tirth Kshetra. There is already money dedicated to the Shiva circuit of tourism. The investments which will come to Kashmir will not only be in the health sector, in the education, in the tourism, or say agriculture and allied sectors. It will be also in the religious tourism, spiritual tourism, and we have a role to play here. Already this government itself, the LG who moved out, sanctioned 8 crore rupees, 8.5 crore rupees for Shailputri in the Baramulla, because that was devastated in 2014 floods. So the intent is there, the willingness is there, the commitment is there. How to implement it on the ground, we all need to sit together and find out that, and without making unnecessary noises. And I can assure you that even people from Kashmir also understand that. I can share with you one of the experiences which I had during my visit to Shalimar Garden 3 years earlier. One elderly lady, elderly means around 55-60 lady, Muslim lady. Once I interacted with her, we were just talking, she said with a painful voice, that happened here because you moved out. So there are people who recognize that, who understand the importance of Hindus, minority Hindus being here, but we cannot live here with, I agree and am of the firm opinion that only goodwill is not sufficient. There needs to be a fully constitutionally and legally guaranteed mechanism that in case goodwill is withdrawn, we can still live there peacefully, honorably. Not only males but females also. They will never have to again listen what they had to listen in 1990. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Krishna ji, unmute yourself. You are still muted. Krishna ji, you are still muted.
Right. Unmuted, I think.
You're not. You are still muted. Okay, now don't touch it.
Right. Unfortunately, thank you very much, Ajay ji. It was such an inspiring and informative talk. We're really indebted to you that you made time to come on our this Zoom meeting, and it must be quite late in Jammu now. And we appreciate it. We're very much, our gratitude to you, our huge thanks to you. And it was indeed excellent insight into what you said. I hope we haven't really kept you up till late. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, we don't have time for our question answer session. We have a small video to play. If we can play that small video, and that is for a couple of minutes. But I still like to say a big thank you to all the panelists and all the participants. But I apologize for not being able to have our question answer session. Unfortunately, we made start a little later than we had expected. Thank you so much. Now we'll just have the video, short video.
I'm so delighted to join these seminars to celebrate the revocation of Articles 370 and 35A exactly a year ago by India's central government on behalf of Jammu and Kashmiri people. Article 35A is particularly important because this gives people freedom as women to be able to marry as they wish, to be able to take property if they marry someone outside Jammu and Kashmir. For women, of course, this is absolutely vital. We cannot guarantee that our husbands will be exactly where we live ourselves. So I really welcome the revocation of Article 35. But Article 370 was also of great importance. And may I pay great tribute here to my old friend Krishna Bhan, Mrs. Bhan, who made such a difference when I was writing the historic report for the European Parliament, which went right through with massive majority and then right up to the Council of Ministers and the Commission and changed the policy of the European Union towards Jammu and Kashmir indelibly and for good. And without Krishna Bhan and the Pandit Foundation, her Kashmiri people, which are now global in fact, is wonderful, I don't think I could possibly have done that. So may I offer Krishna Bhan very, very warmest thanks. And for all of you internationally, may I wish you 2 wonderful webinars. This is a time for celebration for Jammu and Kashmir.
That was Baroness Nicholson talking about her report on Kashmir. Thank you so much, and I'd like to all of you to join me in thanking Tejas Singhavi for this excellent facilitating our meeting today. Can you hear me? Am I still mute? Can you hear?
You're okay. You're okay. You're okay.
Yes, loud and clear.
I want to say big thank you to Tejas as well. He really did a wonderful job. Thank you, Tejas, and thank you, everybody. Sorry about the question answer session.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
I want to especially thank Honorable Bob Blackman and our member of Legislative Council from Jammu. I think they added a lot of depth and detail and commitment to this cause, and we are greatly appreciating your work, whether you are doing it in UK or you are doing it in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all the panelists. Excellent speeches, excellent input. Thank you. I hope you all.
Thank you, Krishna. Very grateful.
Thank you.
Very grateful.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure Ajay ji is still around. I think, is Ajay ji still around?
He is still here, yes.
I just want to make a very small point because you mentioned lady in his 50s as elderly. I think anybody up to 80 years is a very young person.
Yeah, 60s are now new 40s.
Ajay ji, very grateful. All the speakers, especially Ajay ji from Jammu and Kashmir, we are so grateful. We'll work together, way forward.
Yes, we will work.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Namaskar, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Vijay ji. I hope you had a good time.
Absolutely. Very thought-provoking and just the impetus for us to, there's a lot of work to be done. And we hope to return home soon.
Yes. So hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Thank you. Namaskar, everybody.
Namaskar, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna ji.
Bye.
Thank you, Namaskar. Very grateful, Krishna ji. Bye.
Thank you, Satya ji. Thank you for coming.
Namaskar.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, Chandan ji, you are there. Sorry. You are still working. We didn't have
I was working. My apologies. I was working, so I got stuck up with work.
Chandan ji was supposed to do the question answer session just as well. We didn't have time.
I accept it. Next time I'll keep the time.
on the Facebook. You can watch the video. It was very good.
Definitely, I'll go through. I will. I've missed it, but I'll watch it. I'll watch the recording. Thank you, Krishna ji.
Thank you, Teja ji. You have done a most professional job. Thank you, Teja ji. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now